Boom! Howdy, fam. Anthony Johnson here today, founder of 21 Studios, co-founder of the Redman Group, 21 Convention, 22 Convention, 21 University, and everything else in the manosphere, right? I'm here today with Socrates to my right, your left, and we got a bunch of other guests coming on the show. It's episode 151. We're going to be taking a look and talking about and discussing the amazing 21 Summit 2021 15-year anniversary event that just got done a couple days ago right here in Orlando, Florida, the center and the Woodstock of the manosphere. So without further ado, welcome to the show, Mr. Ken Curry, returning panelist to the show, marriage and family therapist out of Colorado. Will Spencer from the Renaissance of Men podcast and project, shall we say. And Steve the Dean Williams from The Man Mindset, returning obvious panelist to the show. And Jay Vincent, personal trainer and HIIT trainer and returning panelist to the show. We met a few more to hop on today as well. Boys, welcome to the Redman Group, episode 151.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks, Anthony.
Is my audio still coming through good, too? Everything's clear?
Mm-hmm. Sound great.
Yep.
Sweet. All right, it was a good time last weekend. That's it for today's show. See you guys next time.
Good job, guys. We did it.
Yep. So, guys, I want to use this episode to kind of, get out our thoughts about the event, review it, discuss it. There's a lot that happened, like we were talking about, pregame before we went live here. For me, it was like a week full of just nonstop, action-packed fun and decision-making and running around, loading, unloading the equipment, and then, of course, running the event and managing you wild animals, you rascals, bunch of rascals you are.
I was extra wild.
Yeah. Let's start actually with Socrates since he's here with me in person. Soc, you've seen the event longer than anyone except me.
Yeah.
Literally. You've seen it even before pre-announcement back in 2006, which is really old, really old.
Yeah,
school.
old school.
Super old. Socrates, super old.
Yeah.
Yeah, before I had all this and there was a gray hair in my head, right?
Yep. So talk to me about what you thought about this event compared to all the other ones you've seen, which is a lot. You've seen probably like 10 or something like that now.
I want to say this is the last number of times, 11th, I think I've spoken at, which is really remarkable. But to be honest, each convention has its own identity. Obviously, with the context within time and in culture, I think it influences it a lot. But this particular time, we actually had the three conferences all simultaneously. And I think, last year was the first time we attempted that, where you were able to pull that off. Anybody can throw a conference once. Not everybody can throw three simultaneously back to back in the middle of a pandemic. So that in itself is worthy of a complete remark. But for being in the center of our second year of a pandemic, this was the most relaxed, anxiety-free event that I've seen. It has been, the flow of that was phenomenal. A lot of the attendees kind of understood what was going to be taking place, the social meet and greets. The volunteers were all experienced, having done it before, and the new ones were very, very involved in learning their roles, developing it, and embracing that. But I'll say something else too, is that the convention and the summit itself has kind of gone beyond just the manosphere itself and has gone into other arenas with a big focus in on those topic areas. And I see that being a transformational approach. And that very much was woven throughout the entire thread of this summit itself.
Yeah. Yeah, it was, I loved it, man, the whole experience. I want to hear some of these other guys before I comment. I don't want to hog up too much time here for myself. But what do you guys have to say about the event in relation to what Sock said, or just kind of on your own? What are your initial thoughts for how it went down?
Yeah, this is the, let's see, I've been to 3 of these. So the first fatherhood patriarch one, and then 2019, and then I missed the 2021. But this one, it was just, it was busy. It was exciting. It was in person. I think the fact that it's in person and you meet a lot of people, that's I think you've always said this, Anthony, it's what happens in between the speeches, going out to lunch, later, the other events that you have. It's just, that was just spectacular for me to interact, rub shoulders with different speakers, the different attendees. I think meeting the new guys that hadn't been there before was just amazing. But it is so busy. Like, for instance, Jay and we didn't ever meet. I didn't get to meet you. And so it's like, because there's so much to do and so many to be able to meet in that time. But just a spectacular event.
Yeah. Ken, how did it compare to what you'd seen previously? Because like you said, this is your third time. You had seen the fatherhood event standalone and the main event standalone. This was significantly different just in terms of like operation. How did it contrast?
Well, operation, I mean, good grief, having three at the same time. And I'm reminded of that, the one middle room you had in between all three stages, with all the tech and it's just like, it was a machine and it ran really well. And it's just amazing that we had three things going on at once. But to what Socrates was saying, I think the energy of the event was where he said it was low anxiety. There wasn't anything there that was like, there's this anxious energy where, oh my gosh, what's going to happen, or that. It was just chill, and it was.
Oh my God! What pill am I? What pill am I?
Yeah,
taking?
there was the energy of being able to interact with other guys. There wasn't this competitive feel to it. It was just like a very abundant energy with the whole event.
Yeah, it felt like Pat Stedman was there. Our chakras were aligned.
Oh, that insurrectionist.
Yeah,
Miss that guy.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a bummer he couldn't make it, man. It was close. It was just legal stuff with his court cases and whatever.
Yep, sure, yeah.
But I expect we'll see him in the future.
Yeah.
Well, let's just keep them on in order, like a clock here, clockwise.
Sure.
This is your first time speaking. I mean, last year you were an attendee, and this year you came back not only as a double speaker. You spoke at 2 events. You also did a lot more than that. You were on hosted panels. You co-hosted a new show, or a new and improved 21 report. Yeah. What was your experience like in general of the event, and also compared to your 2020 first time around?
I've heard multiple people say that the event was really low anxiety, and I only have the basis of comparison of 2020, which I didn't experience as anxiety. It was more like there was just this generalized social anxiety at the time. The event was quite a bit smaller because people chickened out traveling and all that stuff, which was a shame. But nonetheless, I knew that I had to be there. I experienced that event as relatively chill, but kind of subject to the larger social pressures that were going on.
The election was going on too, then.
Oh, that's right. Oh,
yeah. We
were
were
so
like
young.
a few weeks.
Yeah, we were young and innocent back then.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I just remember being in Orlando, and I remember everything being shut down, like restaurants being shut down. They were being pretty crazy. The ones that were open were pretty crazy about masks. It was raining the whole time, basically. So it was like the whole environment around the conference was really kind of odd. But the conference itself, back in 2020, I found was really enjoyable, and everyone was cool to meet and really accessible. And this year it was very much like that. But what I loved was, in addition to how well the conference ran on so many different levels, how aligned all the speakers were with each other, how aligned all the guests were, all the attendees. But then also the relaxed social pressure in Florida was also really nice, and I think that really created maybe kind of a bit like an island in the storm, for people dealing with a lot of the craziness that's going on in the world. It really felt like we can come together and we can be men together, and we can gain strength from each other to confront these larger social issues. And I think that really showed up in the programming of the conference itself. Like, I was talking to a friend last night, and I said, what I experienced in 2020 was a conference, focused on a much narrower set of issues, with a little bit of the appearance of religion at the time. So Pastor Michael Foster, right, and Jesse Lee Peterson. But then this year, there wasn't just religion. There was art and law and politics, along with fatherhood and dating and right up to documentary filmmaking and global communism. And the women's event I got Suzanne Vanker's book, and I've been reading it, and I was like, she's savage. Wow.
Yeah.
She lays, I'm like 5 pages in. I'm like, holy shit, I can't believe anyone's reading it. Someone's writing this. And just to to be able to do the 21 report and meet all the speakers, gave me a real sense of the breadth of topics that everyone was covering, as well as the breadth of personalities, the breadth of backgrounds. And, I think that really showed through with a much larger event that feels like it's really poised to make a big impact. When you pick an event that's about a single theme, it becomes specialized for a very small community. But the subjects of men and masculinity, as I'm discovering, it touches on literally everything. There's nothing that the subject doesn't touch on. And I think that the convention is really opening the doors to let in as many different perspectives and personalities as possible. And, it's a feeling of like, we're on the cusp of something big this year. And I'm really excited to see where it goes over the next 3 years.
Yeah, we just had the Gerber baby, Michael Foster, chime in here. The Gerber baby all grown up. He says 21 has been trending a more and more mature direction for years, but it made a massive breakthrough this year.
That really needs to be underscored. It really did. The Overton window of observation on this is really shifting. It's no longer the center of the manosphere. It's starting to become something much bigger.
Yeah. I like the way I actually was watching Socrates, how he introduced me in my speech to the men at the State of the Manosphere. And he kept mentioning the Overton window. I keep expanding it, in part due to my abrasiveness and bombastic nature. I think it's a little bit more than that, though. It's also like inviting you guys and having this super, super, super wide angle lens on masculinity and femininity and men and women. And I love it, man. And I guess it's not always intentional. It's just like what happens organically as I keep pushing the limits on what we can do.
And to underscore a specific instance that nobody else is going to know, I mean, the panelists may know, but what the attendees and probably the public won't know is that for the 22 con, you had a list number of speakers. It was stellar. They were excited. They were engaged. But interestingly enough, they were able to go to some of the other events. And two of them went over to the Patriarch to catch Jeff Younger's talk. And we're so moved by his experience, what was going on in his life. And for those that don't know, he's fighting to prevent his pediatrician wife from castrating their children. One of two twins. So she's selecting terrible. One, not the other. It's absolutely mortifying. The fact that he's been doing this for 7 years, it's just beyond belief. They were so moved, not only by that presentation, but speaking to him in the halls, they requested from Anthony to see if he could come and talk at the 22 convention. And Anthony made that happen. And Jeff was able to put together a presentation the night before and just, knock it out of the park and make a connection with these women. So it's not that you just go, you can go and kind of shape it as well. And so that was, what they were that engaged that they're willing to speak up and say, hey, we want to hear from this individual as well to contribute to our experience. And
I remember that conversation.
Awesome stuff.
I was very, in my head, I was, had a lot going on, but I was interpreting it. I was like, okay, these women are requesting more mansplaining. It's kind of how I thought of it. I was like, all right, I can make that happen, But no, I mean, Socrates is right. Like, I'm very as busy as it gets to try to keep my head on a swivel. And if we need to pivot and add new people, rearrange the schedule, I'll make it happen where it's possible. Let's move on to Jay. Jay, this is your second time around at 21. You've been watching the speeches for a long time, since the McGuff days back in the day. You come primarily from an exercise and high-intensity training perspective, but also you see the value in what we do with masculinity and for men and for women. So what are your thoughts on this year versus last year, your first time around last year?
I think it's interesting that Socrates mentioned it was kind of lower anxiety. I felt last year it was a little more intense, but this year it kind of felt, and I left with that feeling. It's funny that somebody else mentioned it, but it felt a little more laid back. Kind of was just kind of like a bunch of guys just kind of hanging out this year. And maybe because of COVID and all that other nonsense that was taking place at the time, but a lot more laid back and a lot more casual this year, and it just felt smooth. It was nice.
Yeah, I don't. This year, I don't recall seeing any masks at all. Like in 2020, I saw like maybe
just one guy.
Yeah, like one guy or two, or very, very small amount of people. This year, you didn't see any, like nothing. So I thought that was just as a physical. I mean, you're not required to, like, basically. So it's still interesting to see it, like that little transition like that.
Yeah, the hotel last year, they were giving glares to most of the men at the conference. Were not wearing masks. But the hotel kept glaring at us and saying, you need to wear a mask. And we're like, okay, yeah, sure. No.
Yeah. It was when we left the conference area, they got bitchy. In the conference area, they told me explicitly, like, we don't care. You rented the space. But yeah, and the rest of the hotel. Yeah, they've been all right, though. They've been really cool for being chill in a lot of the stuff, particularly last year when it was very difficult at all to hold a conference anywhere in 2020.
Yeah, I was amazed that you pulled the thing off. Ryan Mickler was going to do his main event. It was either a week or two later, That was his first big event, and he had to cancel it because even
Yep.
his guys from the Order of Man, from the Iron Council, like wouldn't travel across the country. Which, you know, I guess I understood, but I found a little disappointing. But there's Anthony charging ahead and making the con. It was a huge deal, man. Huge deal that you pulled it off. Right? Imagine where you'd be this year if you hadn't. Right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I have like a ride or die attitude, and nothing will stop me. So yeah, always, man. If it's physically possible, we'll find a way. Steve, you've been watching 21 go down for several years now. You first spoke at the Patriarch back in 2019. Yes. You've been with us to Poland, across the world. You've been with us to the Florida events for men, the main events. How have you seen 21 evolve since your first experience in spring 2019?
Well, to me, it's like for regular guys, it's like the Comic-Con. It's like for young men that watch all these men on YouTube. Is that gives them the opportunity just to meet them and shake their hands and pick their brains and to be able to learn. I mean, let's go to the 22. I mean, a lot of women are probably under the impression that the 22 is all about yelling at women, telling women they're no good or anything. But no, there's a lot of education. It's really educating women. It's not really bashing women. It's educating them on how to be more feminine, to be able to get a masculine man. But it was a lot of shock, but a lot of women, I mean, the women loved it. And I mean, just going there and we shift around and to see the attendees. I think the attendees are everything, man. How the way they came in, they you know, I always see there's a little bit of nervousness at first when they come in because they're like, wow, oh my God, that's Ken Curry, that's Jay Vincent. Oh my God. Oh my gosh, I don't know if I should, can I poke them? You know, not poke them, but
are you real?
Yeah. Right. Can I reach out?
It's not real.
Right. It's not real. But then when they begin to see that it's real, and like you say, it's all laid back. When they begin to see that, they then begin to loosen up and they begin to let that guard down to really start to ask questions to help themselves grow. So, I mean, it's just so many layers. I mean, the VIPs, the meet and greets and all these things. It was just like an amusement park of great knowledge and great fun, man.
That's why I call it Dream World. Welcome to Dream World, baby. It's like Disney World, man. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. It's like a theme park for masculinity and femininity.
Absolutely.
We got to take a little pause here. We got to welcome the Gerber baby, Michael Foster, to the panel here. Welcome,
here he comes. Your souls are about to be saved.
Yeah, man. Michael, can you hear us? Everything good?
Gerber baby. I can.
Yeah.
What's the Gerber berry baby thing?
It's something that's been coming to mind lately. When I was growing up at the football games, I played Pop Warner. They would mess with the kids. They'd be like, all right, the Gerber baby's here. From I don't know, they even did to the coaches, like shit like that. It's just this thing growing up. It's a Florida thing.
Gotcha.
A term of endearment.
Yeah, Florida people tend to be really normal people, right?
Oh yeah. Yep.
Florida men especially.
Yep. No, it was a good conference, guys. It was good. I heard Jay say that it was more laid back, and I think when you're not trying to prove yourself, when you're just really just trying to share ideas, talk, it really is like a convention, a meeting of the minds, talking about topics that brings the anxiety level down, it brings the energy level down, and makes it much more chill. And that's we're able to have some pretty hard conversations, some hard topics, and it remained very mature. Yeah, I think it was good. I mean, I kept commenting on that throughout the whole thing, how it was just so laid back. And even for me, and I did a whole lot at this year's conference. And so even with all my new responsibilities and sessions, it still felt way calmer than last year. And I think that's a real positive, right? That means that we're building a platform together where we can talk about things that matter. Like one of my goals in our religion panel is I did not want to diminish our differences. I hate that where it's kind of a wussy way to do it. Like, hey, we all basically believe the same thing. No, we don't. But we should be able to have a really wise, mature conversation. I think we achieved that on that panel, but that was really reflective of the entire conference and of guys that aren't trying to dunk on each other, right? Guys that aren't like out to get each other. It was really trying to talk about hard things, and we all have the same aim of helping men. It wasn't about Gumroad classes and books and all that sort of stuff as much as it was about what the conference was started to do, which is help guys.
Yeah, I saw that the religion panel. I think it did highlight fundamentally the entire event, like the best of it. It was like the best of the best of the best. And I see it. I really like the way you put it. Like, you guys weren't a bunch of wussies trying to downplay your differences. What you were trying to do, from my perspective, and that was the one panel I watched the whole thing. I did watch a lot of the panels, more than the speeches, but that one I watched, I think, every minute of it. And I think you guys are basically forging bridges between each other. Like, you were identifying, then solidifying shared common values, fundamental values. And that's where the co-belligerent, I think, thing highlights or comes into play. And yeah, so it's like you didn't downplay these differences, but then you found the bridges and you're like, let's build that bridge a lot more. We're going to build back better. The bridge.
Anthony twisting all those slogans.
Hope
and change you can believe in.
Yeah, man. Well, it's like the patriarchy. They broke it and they smashed it, so we got to build back better. You know, it's
build back the patriarchy. I love it. Yeah, Full support. Build back the patriarchy.
Anthony,
better.
Anthony, one of the things I love about what Michael's talking about is that we all have differences, but we're all in this conversation, and we all want to empower men. We all want to build a really strong world. And I think but we have differences. And the thing that's so spectacularly important about the conversations that we're having is, even though we have differences, we're able to have a good relationship and respect each other. And I think that's rare in our society today, because what you see is this polarizing. If you have a different opinion than me, then you become my enemy. And what I love is that, man, we don't have that. One of my favorite moments of the whole weekend was after Suzanne Venker's talk. Jesse Lee Peterson gets up and he says something like, "We all know that women shouldn't be educated," and then he asks his question, right, which was obviously the opposite of what Suzanne Venker believes. And so there was this massive tension between the two, and Suzanne was able to stand up and say what she believed. Jesse was able to say what he believed. And they were able to have a good conversation with the question and answer time. And it just seems like that tension that we have of differences doesn't mean that we can't have a relationship and we can't respect each other. I just really love that.
Yeah, I heard about that. I didn't see that, but I heard about that later. And I heard from a couple people, actually. I want to watch it on video. I'm excited. But yeah, in fact, Jesse Lee, not only did that happen, Jesse Lee invited Suzanne Venker on his show. For a full hour-long interview or whatever. So she was asking me if she should do it, and I was like, absolutely. Like, I was like, Jesse Lee, he's an extremely intense individual, but he'll be respectful, and he has like 500,000 dudes who follow him, and it'd be worthwhile for you to go talk to him and see where it goes.
What did he mean by women should not be educated? I think I heard about that later. Like, did he mean that women shouldn't go to college? Women shouldn't be taught how to read? Like, did he specify?
He didn't specify, but I think because the context around that time was about college.
Okay.
About, further education, advanced education and all that.
Yep.
Yeah, it's higher education. It's college level or above. Yeah, flat out. Never married a college educated woman. Yeah,
make women illiterate again.
Well, yeah, no. Oh my God, no. He did not say that, but I did hear him saying some others, and like women are evil, and he gives kind of a justification for what he believes. But it is one of those things where people were able to say very, very polar opposite things and belief systems, but we're terribly respectful for each other. And for the most part, for example, one of the best conversations I sat in on, because I was just smoked by it, was Michael Foster and Jeff Younger talking about religion. And they have very different views on it, but they first sought commonality. These are the things that we agree upon. These are the things that we identify and value. And then it wasn't like, here's how we differ, or here's how you're wrong. It very much was, well, this is what I believe, and this is what we teach, and this is how we view things. And they were able to share and actually go deeper into insights with that. And that's just kind of me relaying something where, as much as my understanding of what they were talking about was, but it was fascinating just to be a fly in that wall late at night, hearing that conversation.
That was the first conversation I had. I walked.
Yeah, that was the kickoff of the evening. Yeah, absolutely right. Yeah.
Hang on, guys. I got to welcome and we're going through all this fun Jesse Lee stuff. We got another Gerber baby to welcome to the show. Mr. Coach Greg Adams.
Oh,
Gerber baby of the man.
What's up, brother?
What's up, man? Welcome to the show, man. Appreciate you being here.
I'm just catching up. It's West Coast early time over here.
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
8:30. This is my
And he
sleeping day.
And he said you have your son's basketball game to go to.
Yeah, he has
so.
basketball games later on, you know. But
is he as good as you yet? Good as you? Good as the coach? Is he as good as the coach? Balling yet?
No.
No.
Not yet. Not yet. At some point
yet.
he will, hopefully. Yeah.
So, Coach, we were kind of going through the event, everyone's individual experience of it, particularly if they spoke last year or previously. Everyone in this case either attended or spoke previously. So you spoke for your first time in 2020 at all the events too. You did all three. What was your contrast between 2020 and 2021? The events, the COVID differences, things were a lot more chill this year. What was your experience like this year?
Yeah, it was a lot more chill, without the virus hoopla, hysteria going on. Everybody was relaxed and could actually enjoy the event. So, that was a good time. I was a lot more comfortable with the people and who I was meeting. The speakers that I was familiar with already, it was a lot more comfortable. And so I was able to relax and preparing and speaking to the audiences. I had a better expectation of what was going on. So yeah, it was a good event. I'm assuming that this is normally how the event was based on, compared to the 2020 event, because the 2020 event, it was a lot more stressful. It seemed like just getting to the event. This one, it kind of eased into the event and it was an enjoyable time.
Yeah, it was 2020 was interesting because I had to kind of on the fly create 21 Summit because we had the spring events, then COVID, the COVID crap. Right. That's what ended up creating that through the triple event 21 Summit. And I had thought of that, pre-COVID, but I had never, it was way sooner than I anticipated actually pulling that off. So there was some novelty to doing that was difficult. Like I didn't know how to do that. I knew in my head, in theory, how to do it. I was like, I never done this before. I do usually one at a time, not three. So that
I didn't know. I didn't know that. I thought it was always organized like that. So this is how I knew the event would be. So now, going into the second time, I couldn't see it different than the first time. But you guys all know that it's different. It's run differently.
Yeah, Will Spencer has the same experience. Like his first time was 2020. Mm-hmm. Even Michael Foster and Ken Curry and Steve, though, they saw it back in the old days. We either did the Patriarch event once at a time or the main 21 once at a time. Yeah, multiple events was never done at the same time. It's a step up. Like it's at least with one event, there's still a lot to do, but you can focus. As the guy leading it.
I can see that. Yeah. Well, I enjoyed it. I enjoyed going from one day to the other, just talking to the different groups because everybody's there for a different reason. So that's why I like it split up like that. You can go to one room and there's more people focusing on father and parent and patriarch, and then there's another guys that are in there maybe for dating or workout advice.
Yep.
And then the women are there. Yeah. So it's good.
Yeah. And I think 3 events for all the overhead necessary to present them leads to so much space to have so many different varieties of topics covered. Like, for example, if you cut off the Patriarchs event, you lose Carnell Smith and Eric Carroll and Trevor Loudon. You meet all that diversity of speakers in terms of subject matter. And so you have 2 stages running at once, and also, of course, you get rid of 22 and you lose Suzanne Venker and Alyssa Isaac. So if you were to try and put that all on one stage over the course of 3 or 4 days, the schedule would just be packed and you'd naturally lose a lot of that weight, a lot of that gravity. So I think it's a great innovation to have all 3 going at once to specialize for people's interests.
Yeah, and I'm still nervous too about having women speak to men. So I like having women speak to women, and then they can say whatever they want.
What would what would they say? Like, what would they say to us? In terms of a talk that we wouldn't say to ourselves.
Well, there are some women like Janice Fiamengo, who's a savage, who could break down feminism. Like, there's some potential there, but it's just there's so much woman-splaining in our culture. There's so much like women talking down to men, and this. We're a country basically run by women, and that's not good. And our event is like, no, we're gonna separate these things out.
I think that's good.
Yeah,
and I think there's something to be said about having a woman speak to men that honor, regard, and respect men. And it's one thing for men to talk about that and to present that. It's another to hear it from the opposite sex to you from an audience, because we don't get to hear that. And that's something I think a lot of the attendees who did not go to 22 miss out on, that quite frankly, we're able to see because we have that option to be able to go into that environment, spend time with them, and then come out. That I think in many cases, that's kind of the next missing step, is that women are finding their own voices and speaking up for men and men's issues and men's rights and equality in a very sincere and integral way.
Well, my solution is basically to just film it, right? So, Suzanne's going to talk to women, but we're going to record it, and everyone's welcome to watch it, obviously, on the internet, in 21 University and stuff. So if men want to listen to some women talk, I'm not entirely opposed to that, but I want it to be just on the internet, and that way it's not this like femsplaining thing to their face. I don't know. I just get nervous about it. It feels like a slippery slope having women talk to men in person.
Yes.
Well, let me say this.
Go ahead.
In the 22 convention, both years, the only time I've had a combative disagreement was at the 22 with a woman. Like this, they're so ready to stand up and try to prove you wrong. Like my whole talk wasn't to say you're wrong. I was just giving you the truth on exercise. In both years, I had somebody come up and not ask me questions, but kind of be combative with me and argue against me.
Try to womansplain to you.
Yeah.
I heard Coach Greg had a little bit of this too.
Oh yeah.
I heard Coach Greg was like, "You're wrong," and this woman just lost it. She walked out of the room, man.
Come up and I'll take questions, but she didn't like that my talk was about myths and telling you that they're wrong. If you believe them, you're wrong.
Yeah.
Tried to tell me that they were still right. It's like, no.
Yeah, I think the
sign language, shame, insults, guilt.
If you got a woman up at the in front of the guys, I think it could create a problem if they're trying to explain their point of view and they say one thing and then everybody, it would be the reverse problem that I would see happening when what Jay experienced, and I think Steve experienced someone last year. Yep. And we had one this year where there was somebody who she was just hell bent on being offended. And what I noticed was she probably was offended with everyone's talk. Right?
She came after me too.
Okay,
I told her the same thing. She was like, I just told her, no, that's impossible. That won't happen. No, just like I think so. Scripture straight up says that women shouldn't have authority over a man, and it's talking about teaching authority. In particular, I think it's a sin to have women teach men, right? And let me just be clear: everyone believed that for thousands and thousands of years. Now, conversating, being on open, having a conversation, a woman sharing something with me, like I can learn from women. I'm not saying I can't learn from women. That's not, but it's 1 Timothy chapter 2. It's about as clear. There's so many topics that we are unsettled in Christianity, but that one has a verse that says they can't, right? They can't, and they can't because it's how God's made them. It goes back to the creator order. So I think it would be a real mistake. I think it would be hard for them. Basically, you see women go two directions. When they're teachers, they either become very brash and combative and talk down to you, or they kind of take on this very motherly sort of thing, like a way. I don't think that's what men need. Certainly not the combative, but I think what we really need is a platform for men to teach men how to be masculine, and a woman can't do that. Women don't have the ability to turn boys into men. Right. They participate in that as a mother, but it takes a father, and that's if we're going to get these guys go in the direction they need and support, it'd be a mistake to put a woman in front of them. So that's my take.
I mean, I could see like Janice Fiamengo giving a lecture on like, this is feminism from the inside. And Janice Fiamengo is unequivocal in her respect and love for men. So I could see something like that, but past that would be specific domain information that she has as a woman in some sort of larger political, like something not related to men being more masculine or women, or not related to men being more masculine, but like you need to see this perspective from a place that you can't go into Like in a political sense, I think that would be okay. But like beyond that,
my
and especially Janice.
My solution for this is basically to have the women talk to women, and then from that, men can watch if they want. That way, it's voluntary. It's not thrown in their face.
Yeah,
and interviews, right? Will can interview a speaker. He interviewed Suzanne on it. So interviews where the interviewer is kind of leading the conversation. Like if I were to ever have Janice at 21, it would be a sit-down interview with me personally on the stage, and that way it would kind of. I think it would zero offense to Janice. So I have a lot of respect and love for her, but that would help me frame the conversation so that the men don't get woman-splained to. Not even by Janice, who loves men and respects them, I think, immensely.
Yeah, well,
so
well, I think if you have her have a woman come up and talk about how to fold, separate the colors from the whites, how to vacuum, and how many stirs it takes to make a cake or something, I think that'd be perfectly fine. I mean, I'm serious.
Homemaking.
Hang on. Before we move off this topic,
I don't need a woman to show me how to iron.
Hang on. So last year, Steve and Coach Greg and Jesse Lee had a couple walkouts. This year, I think Coach Greg had the only walkout from the females. So talk to me about that experience. I didn't see that, but I heard about it. I'm excited to hear about it.
Yeah, she said that she had an appointment to go to, which like you're at a convention, you're listening to the speaker. What appointment? What work appointment that she had? But she in the middle of this of what I was talking about, she said something of that was offensive. She made a comment, and I thought I kind of identified that it came from her direction. And then at the end of it, there was question and answer period, and she was offended about some of the things that I said about career women, because I kind of insinuated, hey, career women sounds great at 20 and 30, but it's going to wear down by the time you get 40, 45, 50. You're not going to want to work that hard anymore, and you're going to start seeking a man. I'm like, isn't this natural? And I said, by 60, you're a Walmart greeter. So I kind of put that into the speech. And then she said, that's offensive. And then later on, she said, well, career women this, and Kamala Harris will take over, and we need a Kamala Harris and that type of thing.
Wow.
And then I was like, yeah. And I'm like, let's
try again.
Yeah, I hit the buzz on that. And I basically said, look,
where did that come from?
The reason why you have what you have is because men have not exhibited their true strength.
Yeah.
If men were tired of all of this, and in 10 seconds we could change all of this, but we haven't, and so you have what you have today. And I said at some particular point, somebody else is going to come in and be that strength, a la the Taliban. All right. And then there's no negotiation. So that was basically what I said. And she packs up all her stuff, grabbing her papers and purses, and she wants to try to get other people riled up on the way out. And she storms out. And the next day I see her, she's batting her eyes. She's like, she's a little bit more warmer.
Yeah.
I've got to point something out on this. I have
Go
to,
ahead.
okay? So in my 2 years, there's been a woman in particular in each 22 audience that's been real aggressive. And both times I've watched that woman try to pick up guys while they're there. Both times. Both times.
Yeah.
And I watched that. I watched the woman that was confronting all of us, Greg. I watched her at the bar. First, I watched some guys straight up try to some 21 attendee try the most blue pill sipping tactic. It was amazing. I was listening to I was trying to get a glass of wine, and he's like, oh, I totally see what you're saying. I agree with you. They should blah, blah, blah. I was like, is this really happening at 21? Then she was not taking it. But then a mutual friend of ours, Anthony, she was like after him hard. And
the whole time.
A red pill alpha male, a real red pill alpha male.
And so it's funny.
I know who you're talking about.
Yeah, these women that are really angry, what they want is they want men. They really do. They're testing, pushing hard. She was there. And Greg, what you were doing is you were being masculine, and she had to test you, right? She was like drawn to your masculinity, and she was desperate for it. And you see it acting out in her brashness, and then later in her trying to use her sexuality to capture a guy. It's happened 2 years now. Both women that are the troublemakers always are trying to pick dudes up.
Well, I banned that troublemaker from last year because these are two different women, one per year. Michael is correct. The one last year, I have it on video, and so does Steve. That woman put her finger on Coach Greg. And
I
Coach
remember.
Greg, I was like, whoa, because that's done.
Time to go.
Time to go. And you know, so I banned her immediately in my head. I'm like, Shane, never coming back. And she didn't. One of the women this year wanted to invite her back. I was like, nope, veto, 100% out. But Coach Greg handled that shit like a boss, man. He walked her out. I was gonna walk her out, and Coach Greg's like, I got this. And he walked her out of the building.
Walk her on out, and then had her looking through the glass.
Yeah.
Bye-bye. Go get your ride.
That's how I knew Coach Greg had game. I was like, nobody who does this doesn't get laid. Like, you have to have game to handle a woman like that.
And you gotta understand what it's about. Not a lot of men stand up to them. And they haven't seen it. And when they do, they get wetter than the Niagara Falls. They
Oh my gosh, guys.
They love it. And then the next time you see them, they're wearing a slinky outfit and they're presenting themselves to men. And that combativeness is no longer there. She already saw who was the man. And then she says, that's who I want. This is the problem in today's world that men don't understand. We're trying to tell you, when you appear weak, they're not going to respect you.
That's right.
But they're going to test you. Women test all men. They test the pastor. They test the Mac daddies like my man Steve. They test who's going to test Jay Vincent? And women will test Jay. Look how Jay's built. Like, men know, and I explain this to women. Men know hierarchy. We immediately establish it right when we walk in the room. We establish who the leader is, who's the dominant, who's the beta. We do this, but women don't want to play that game. They just want to be like, we're all equal. Okay, that's not how it works. See, I know that Jay can punch my teeth back in the back of my throat without any problem. You know what I mean? It wouldn't even hurt his hand. So we would establish that situation there. But women feel like they can just challenge. Let me just challenge Jay. No, and what they're doing is they're testing to see if how he presents himself. And then when he presents himself and he stands his ground, then they lie on their back. All right, that's how it goes.
I also think this is a unique situation for America. Like, I feel like if we were doing the convention in Poland, like we have, it would be very unusual to see Polish women, if they attended, act like this. They wouldn't, even if they wanted to test, even if they felt these dynamics in their body and their, the Niagara Falls. America has such a socially feminized, this feminist garbage that they act like this. They feel entitled to act like this, and they don't even think twice about it. And their grandmas wouldn't do this if they went to a conference. They'd be much more polite.
Hey, brothers, I need a jet real quick.
Oh yeah, go for it.
Great conference. Okay. Good talking to y'all.
Thanks, Michael.
See you later, man.
Good seeing you, Michael.
Well, with the exit of the Gerber baby, Michael Foster, we got the Asian Gerber baby, Arthur Kwan Lee. Welcome,
What's
Arthur.
up, Arthur?
What's up, man?
Arthur, I know you've been backstage for a few minutes. I appreciate your patience.
Yeah, I like what I'm hearing.
Yeah, man. Well, right off the bat, this is your first time at a 21 convention. You and I had met previously, briefly, at a Jesse Lee men's event. What was your experience of 21 Summit and 21 Convention and the whole shindig as your first time after seeing the speeches for probably a couple years?
Oh, I think it was beautiful, man. Just this idea of expanding the self-actualization process in masculinity. There's that one domain of defining and validating your existence based on the opposite sex, but now it's about religion, art. It's some deeper issues, and just to come together as men in this enlightenment, it's a beautiful thing, man.
Yeah, one of the things Michael Foster, he just hopped off, but he said on Twitter, like right at the beginning of the event, or maybe like the night before, last week, he said that 21 is good for America. And I took that as a compliment, obviously. And that's a big compliment. I'm like, because that guy, I don't think he was kidding. He meant that on a tweet. I think he meant it literally and directly as written. But it reminds me, like Ken and these guys are saying, like, I think 21 Convention and 21 Summit, all the events, they reflect like what America should be, right? This like a real diversity of opinions, a diversity of faiths, a diversity of races and stuff. There's Asian guys, black guys, white guys, atheist guys, Christian guys. There's like a Muslim attendee. I don't think we've had any Muslim speakers, but there's this huge wide array of ideas and personalities and backgrounds. And typically even we have nationalities there too, absent the travel restrictions. You have a lot more Canadians, British people, New Zealand, Australian, India, Asia. That's limited just temporarily due to COVID crap. But I feel like we do what all these people, what America should be. Like what I grew up in the 90s, what I think was a lot more normal. Like the Christians don't have a public space now. To me, is really bizarre. Even as an atheist, like I don't like seeing that. It's alarming to me because I feel like if they silence you guys, like I'm fucking next. And then who else is, we see this cancel culture crap. So it's super cool to see all this stuff, right? And even then focuses. You have the artist guy, you got the psychologist, you got the therapist, you got the podcaster, you got the coach, you got the architect. We've had FBI agents. Like I do love this super, super wide array of stuff, and that we can all relatively get along, even with like deep disagreements, I mean, Michael Foster was up there doing that religion panel, and he was sitting next to other religions, an atheist, a Mormon. He told me he gets more flack for hanging out with Tanner than with me. And I'm just an atheist. I'm
a fabulous
surprised.
panel. That was a great panel, by the way.
Oh yeah, it was savage.
Epic conversation.
Is that going to be on the YouTube channel? The panel?
Yeah, for sure. We got to edit. We're gonna edit the real one. It was up for a little while, and then I took it down.
Yeah,
I like getting the full thing. The final one would be beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But anyway, I think together and collectively, so to speak, we represent like the best of America, which is people really having serious conversations about serious issues, both agreements and disagreements, And that's like even
Anthony,
Coach
I
Greg.
had some attendees talk to me. They were like, "Hey, listen, this is my first time attending this event, but it's very holistic." I said,
"Yeah,
right on. That's the right word you want to hear."
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, we got another panelist we got to welcome. He's hanging out backstage here. Mr. Tony Bruno, co-host of the 21 Report. Welcome, sir.
Good morning, guys. How are you?
Good morning.
Doing good, man.
Coming back from the waves, Tony?
Well, yeah, I was going to surf, but the swell's not up today, so not what they said it was going to be. But I was just on the road and just taking a little mini vacation, so I thought I'd pop in and say hi and see what's up.
Well, Tony, you've seen 21 since 2018. That was your first experience about 3 years ago. You've seen a number of events now. You've seen probably like 4 or 5 of them at this point. How did this one compare to your first experience back in 2018 or any of the previous years that you've seen? Because you have a pretty good breadth of experience watching 21 evolve.
Yeah, I think the best way it's evolved is I don't want to downplay the quality of the men that were at past events, but I think the level of intensity is what I've noticed. And I think men really want to level up. So if you're going there, I think you've made a choice that you want to change something real positive in your life. So
very cool, man. Well, let's talk a little bit about what we spoke about at the events. And we were talking about our experiences there and stuff like that. Each one of us gave a speech there. Everyone except Tony. Everyone here gave a speech at the events. Sometimes multiple. Coach Greg gave 3. Socrates gave 3. I gave like 2 or 4, depending on how you count it. So kind of briefly, if you can, start with Ken. What'd you talk about at the events? You spoke at Patriarch in 22.
Yeah, and I feel like, speaking's kind of hard for me. It's not an easy thing to do. I don't feel like I'm a really good speaker. I feel like I'm more of a teacher. And so I think it was Steve, the dean, was saying this is the education thing. And I feel like that's more of what I did. And so I spoke at the Patriarch on Thursday and spoke on the concept of power and how men and fathers carry our power. And a lot of it was the whole narrative of how the world sees power. And the world really lives in that zero-sum power mindset where there's only a limited amount of power to be had. And so there's this, everybody's scratching and crawling to try to get the little bit of power that they can. And so I wanted to really open that up to, I don't believe that's true. I think there is abundance power. There's plenty of power to go around for everybody. And so if you're a man, if you're a father, if you're a husband, you're able to empower all the people around you. And as a father, we were definitely talking about empowering your children. And so I talked about my family, how as we've grown up and as I've developed this in my own marriage, becoming a power couple, whereas I empower my wife, she empowers me, and we're becoming more powerful. We're becoming more able to provide. We're able to give more to our children and now to our grandchildren. And just the whole idea of power begets power. Instead of this whole thing where we're fighting over that little 1% of 50% power in the zero sum, where the zero sum, if you remember, +1 - 1 = 0. So the +1 has power, the -1 has no power. And so that they're just everybody's scratching for power. And that's the way power is seen today. And I just don't believe that's true. So that was my speech to Patriarch. The 22, and Anthony, you're going to love this because I might have just saved your marriage before it even started.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, you're going to like this. So,
Congratulations, on marriage.
Yeah, she was there.
she was there. And I
Oh,
talked
God.
about the stages of marriage and how marriage is designed to grow us up and to mature us. And most people, we think that the way that marriage is marketed is it's marketed as a happily ever after thing. It's all this chemistry and all this stuff, but when it really comes down to it, marriage is designed to do so much more. And the thing that I really keyed on was it's made to grow us up, to mature us into to more healthy individuals. And so if you know that, and that change is going to happen and difficulties are going to happen in your marriage, and you're prepared for that, you can actually then process that and actually grow and build a much deeper relationship in your marriage. So that was just a really quick synopsis of the speech at 22.
Yeah, it was really well articulated for someone who says they're not a speaker or something. Well spoken, Ken.
Thank you.
We'll do Will and then Coach Greg. I'll keep going clockwise there.
Yeah, at 22, I talked about I helped women see that there are all these different books in the men's space, like King, Warrior, Magician, Lover, Fire in the Dark, Tanner Guzy's Appearance of Power, Ryan Mickler's Sovereignty, and there are all these archetypes that are kind of discussed in those books. So, Skyfall, obviously King, Warrior, Magician, Lover, Skyfather, Striker, Lord of the Earth, Rugged, Refined, Rakish, Protect, Provide, Preside. Like there are all these lists of how men can understand themselves, and all these books are hugely popular, and we're familiar with one, if not all of them. But the women that I met had never heard of them. And I said, well, these archetypes live in every man that you've ever met, right? They're just part of us. And what we're doing at the 21 convention and other areas of the men's spaces, we're seeking to cultivate these things in our own lives. And so what I said to the women was, if you don't see this coming out in the men around you, maybe you have something to do with that. Maybe the way that you shame, or the word that I used during the talk was from the book, The Queen's Code by Alison Armstrong. The word that she uses is castrate, that women intuitively have this knowledge, understanding that's been cultivated culturally over the past 60 or perhaps even more years, that they need to castrate men and keep men weak. To your point, Ken, about power, that power between men and women has become a zero-sum game, and that women have the power of shame over men, and that they use that power, shall we say, liberally, and that weakens the men around them, and that they'll never get to see the true strength and the true heroism come out of their men because of the way they treat the men in their lives. And I kind of tricked them. I kind of put it on them to help them see, like, I'm going to teach you the language of heroes, which is from the Queen's Code book. And then there's a vow in the book before women can actually read on and learn the language of heroes. They have to take the vow, and the vow is, I give up the right to castrate men forever. So you actually can't, obviously you can physically read the book past that point, but you're supposed to take that vow because, the vow that a woman, the reason why a woman would take that vow is because she realizes that she has some accountability, with the way that men respond to her. And so I had the women stand up. Okay, I'm going to teach you the language of heroes, but first you got to take this vow. No big deal. So just everyone stand up. And then I said, raise your right hand and say, I give up the right to castrate men forever. And then they got it. They got it because every woman intuitively knows that she has used, or has at least available to her the power of shame over men. And women are quite drunk on that power, actually, very much so. And so that was the nature of the 22 talk, that women need to give up that power. They need to give up that power so that the men around them will be able to discover their own power. And so women can discover their power, because shame is the nature of the conflict between men and women, where women compete with men. It's an uneven playing field.
So women are drunk on feminism, basically.
Women are drunk on very much so.
Yeah.
And then my 21 talk was about a similar theme, but for men, and about how that power of shame lives not just in our personal lives, but largely in our social political life. So where it shows up in media, where it shows up in the news, where it shows up in our language, where it shows up in television, and just how widespread shame is. It's the water that we swim in as fish. And I gave a whole bunch of examples from the Brett Kavanaugh hearings, which was a giant social society-wide shaming exercise, the Jordan Peterson, Kathy Newman thing, the destruction of Luke Skywalker, what's going on with Will Smith and Jada Pinkett Smith is a gigantic shaming of our national cultural hero. And I just broke it all down from them and said, look, I got that from this book, which I highly recommend everyone read, called The Revolt of the Primitive, which was written in 2001. We're in the midst of a sexual holy war. This is a sexual holy war of the what we might call the dark side of the feminine. That's exactly targeted at the light side of the masculine. Order, strength, discipline. It's this shadow feminine going after the divine masculine, and it is that deep. It is that primordial, and that's why it's taken over our society. And so we as men have to deprogram ourselves from being able to be shamed societally and be able to see through it, which Ken spoke to yesterday on Twitter. You made my day with that. And then we can actually show up on the battlefield and win, because once you push through women's shame, they got nothing else. They got nothing after that, essentially. And so helping men see that and understand this is where the battlefield really is, inside our own minds and hearts and bodies.
Coach Greg, feel free to comment on Will or dive right into your three speeches.
You hit that because I kind of talked something similar about removing the protector. So I tried to make the women's event a little more interactive, and and I started off by asking them what are the roles of men in our society, and they gave the standard: protector, secure, provide, that type of thing. And which I knew that they would do that. And then later on, I set it up and said, well, are women free? What are their roles to society? They gave the standard, nurture, take care of family and that type of thing. And, then I asked the question, are women free? Are women considered free? I said there was a time where husbands and fathers owned women as property. And I said, we're no longer there. We've advanced to that, and women have a certain freedom to make choice. Or do they? Are women free? And so they thought about it, pondered it. Yeah, we're kind of, we can do whatever we want and this and that. And I said, well, you have an obligation to someone who is your owners. We transitioned from men and fathers being owners of women as property, and now you're owned by the government.
Yeah.
You're owned by the government strictly. You have to report to them. They provide to you resources that were first given to fathers and husbands. And then I said, along the lines, you're owned by corporations. They're encouraging you to make these steps to pledge allegiance to them over your family. If you're a 21-year-old woman, you can't say, no, I'm going to just not do school or any of this. I'm going to find a husband and have kids. She would be talked out of that. So there goes your freedom of choice. And then I said, you're also owned by the corporate institutions that sell to you, because women buy up 83% of the gross domestic products here. You're also owned by the public school indoctrination camps and universities, in which 70% of the debt is held by women. So it was kind of a wake-up call, just to let you know, is you have an illusion of freedom, and that illusion of freedom is provided by the protectors, which Will was talking about, which now we're destroying those protectors through shame and humiliation trials and rituals or whatever we're doing with these men. And then now the outsiders or the elite or whoever it is has full control and ownership over you. And now when you need the protectors to be called upon, they won't be there. And I'm trying to show Generation Z, these group of men know nothing about protecting women. They know nothing about being men or masculine. They only know about, hey, we're equal to women. So when you want men to be called on to protect you, they won't be there. I'm just letting you know. So somebody's going to be, your owners, your new owners will be able to assert their dominance over you. And you're going to call to men, and you're going to blow the horn, or I call it on my show, the simp wolf whistle. You're going to call for these men to come save you, and they won't be available. And so I talked about that in the women's conference, and then in the men's conference, the patriarch would something similar. And I presented that topic similar because I spoke in the same day. And then on the 21, I talked about men protecting their meat, and everybody assumes your meat is what's between your legs, but your meat is your money, energy, attention, and time. Okay. So men oftentimes give these things away frivolously in pursuit of women, because we're pursuing women 365 days a year, 24/7. Okay. And I said, it wasn't meant to be that way. We didn't grow up when we had millions of women available to us to preview. There were 20 women, maybe 200 women. And once you got to through those, you went back to work. You started building. You had a family. You protected that family, or you went somewhere else and started a new process. So we're on this constant cycle of we need to get asked. And this is what I also appreciate about this conference is you have men with different philosophies. Nobody's arguing. You know, everybody thinks these YouTubers are going to get together and it's going to be World War III. Oh, you got to do this. You got to do that. Everybody's respectful of each other's opinions. And that's what I really love about it. We can get all these men together and everybody has a slightly different opinion on how to do things. But men have to understand our generation of men have seen more naked women than our fathers, grandfathers, great-grandfathers, their fathers combined. And we're constantly on this loop of chasing tail and we don't protect our meat. So I was trying to give men to understand that, we need to really look at what's important in our lives. And women, no matter what they're programmed to do, they want our money and or energy and or attention and or time. Yeah. And the way you transact that is going to determine your path in this life.
Coach, can I just jump in on that real quick?
Yeah, I got something after you too. Go for it, Will.
Okay. Yeah, no, Coach, I just want to say how much I love in your content, the way that you've created this whole language around talking about these issues like meat, like peace leave, like 304s, you've created this entire, linguistic universe to talk about your worldview and your ideas. It's really sticky. Like you've got some sort of magic around it. That's like you come up with these terms and it's like, that's just the perfect way to describe that. And it's like, not only is it a great way of describing it, but it's very you. And so that's one thing I love about your content. It's like, you've got that dialed in wherever that comes from. Like,
I don't know where it comes from. Sometimes I'll grab something from a rap lyric and be like salami smuggler. I'm like, I'm going to use that.
Yeah, I concur.
You can picture it, right? You can picture salami smuggling. Like that makes sense.
Yep. I concur. Like when I saw you pull up your 21 PowerPoint, the presentation, Coach, and it said protect your meat. I'm like, what the fuck is the meat? And I'm pretty
Everybody's
good.
Everybody's going to want to know what that is, right? You automatically assume you're like, all right, wear a condom. What is this going to be about, right?
But it's perfect though, because it does grab your attention. It is provocative, but not overly so. And then also it has the acronym's perfect: money, energy, attention, time. When I first heard what it meant, I was like, oh, it's dope as fuck. And yeah, you are really good at that. You're very talented at that, man. I love it. The peace sleeve, the salami smugglers, the 304. You got a bunch of them.
I'm still in simp whistle. That's when I wrote down, put my back. Yeah.
Now, Coach,
what is a simp whistle?
Hang on. One of the things Coach said at the end really grabbed my attention. He said that our fathers, we've seen more naked women than our fathers, grandfathers, and their fathers before them combined. And you could even add a few more generations in, right?
You can go all the way down the line. Yeah.
And it's not just naked. You've seen them sexual.
Yeah.
Sexual. It's sexual on display, throwing it out. You see that's the thing about porn is that you're seeing someone throw that on performance-wise their best. And then you second guess, what am I getting? It's just it's a very ugly feedback loop.
Here's what's interesting, because I've said something similar before in a different angle for women. And it's that women today, like Coach, you're talking about women, are they free or are they not free? And in many ways, they're less free than they've ever been. They're indebted to, the college, all the loan money there. Yep. Big daddy government is the new daddy, all that crap. So that's true. But also women today have more political rights in some ways than all of their maternal ancestors combined.
That's true too.
And they still bitch that they're not free. And they don't. And it's like, are you crazy? Like
it's crazy.
You're 1,000 of your maternal ancestors. Yeah, it's nuts. Well, and they have no appreciation for how dangerous the world is and how good they have it. Yes. Like men have died to make this happen for them, and then they scream toxic amount and they insult these men. Right. It's sick. It's really ungrateful and sick. And I think your thing, the duration of that is what came to mind with the men and seeing women. It's a very similar thing. Will?
Oh, and that was the nature of my talk. Is that so? This book, Revolt of the Primitive, which I highly recommend. This author, he's a psychologist, and what he talks about with regard to what you're saying, that women feel like they're not free, that's actually the psychological projection of women feel constrained by reality itself. So when women hear, when the average woman walking down the street hears women's liberation, right, what they're thinking is, political. So women say, we need to be liberated. We need more rights. That's what the average woman thinks. But what the dialogue actually means from an academic standpoint, and the women who are propagating these ideas know it, it's liberation from the constraints of their own body to bear children. It's limitation from physical reality to propagate the species. And that's why you have, I don't know if you guys heard about this ectogenesis thing, like, babies being gestated in machines. I don't know if you've seen that going on, but that's a real thing. And there was, oh yeah, I'll find an article about it. It was on one of those, those high profile technical or technology blogs, and like Vox level, Vox is a pretty mainstream source, radical but mainstream. So there was a photo of this pod that this little baby was being raised in, and the thing is that alone was disturbing, but the real disturbing imagery was it showed a man and a woman, like a married couple, that was their child. But if you look really carefully at the imagery, the man is hyper feminized and the woman is wearing a business suit, like a business skirt, like a whatever, like pant, like a skirt, whatever that's called.
Hillary Clinton outfit.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And so the thing is the sub-communication there is that women want to be liberated and are seeking liberation from the propagation of the species itself, from the reality of physical reality, so they can pursue whatever they want at all costs. Total liberation from any constraints that men have ever felt or men would ever put on them. So when women say we have no rights, they want to be liberated, they're seeking to be liberated from something they can never actually be liberated from. It's like a force that just seeks to destroy everything to get women's liberation.
It's an endless
nature.
Yeah.
Well,
then they pursue self-destruction is what they end up doing. What do women today do? They get shit-faced, they get drunk, they slut it up on Tinder, they get into $100,000 of debt.
Tattoos,
most of what they do,
motherhood.
tattoos, nose rings, like it's endless single motherhood, it's endless self-destruction. And it's you're right, that it's the pursuit of destruction under the guise this fake veil of progress.
And then in which they ask us to fix. They come in and ask us to fix it in the end. They go, hey, you 40-year-old guys, now look at me. And they'll say,
what happened?
Who let a woman in?
Yeah, they'll be like, hey, you should want us. You should still desire us after we trash our lives. And we're like, no. And then it's our fault again.
Well, this is all because we've given them the power of the state.
Yes.
I mean, if you cut off welfare circumstantially, what would they be saying? Like everything would go back to its place.
They put apron on back in the kitchen.
This is American women we're talking about, which makes up about 150 million women. This doesn't happen almost everywhere else. So that leaves another 2.85 billion women who are not under this guise. So it is what it is.
I just want to give a shout out to Jack Donovan. I have his essay "No Man's Land" here, so you guys should all search. It's on his website. It's a long essay about the origins of feminism, and he says, I'll just do a quick quote from it. It says, a common bumper sticker reads, quote, "Feminism is the radical notion that women are human beings." What he says it should read is that feminism is the radical notion that men should do whatever women say so that women can do whatever the hell they want. Right. Yeah. And this was Jack like 10, 15 years ago, something like that. And so, just this is where the energy around the abortion debate comes from. It's so that men can never tell a woman no, even if it comes down to ending a human life. That's where the energy comes from. It's not about what they say it is. The real energy is men will never tell a woman no, even if it means ending a human life.
That is their own genetic offspring. Even if you're a father, and in places like Japan, the father has input. In America, it's zero. You're right. It's all about no. It's all about control.
Mm-hmm.
Let's keep the panel moving here, though. Let's get Jay, and then we'll hit Steve and keep going. Jay, what'd you talk about to the ladies and to the men at 21 and 22?
So this year, to both of them, I talked about very common fitness myths because, let's be honest, most of the problem today is men are just really fucking weak. And I think a good start to turning that around is to improve their physical capacity. To be stronger physically is going to have an effect on their emotional strength and their psychological. Like a lot of these stories I hear about how men are treated by women, well, it's the man's fault. It's the man's fault because he's weak, and he's got to get on a path towards becoming stronger. And I think physically, starting with the fitness aspect of that, it's a great path because it's going to carry over into those other aspects of life. And since men are so fucking weak. They've got every excuse in the book as to why they're not doing this. So my goal, my mission is to break it simply so you no longer have an excuse that you don't have time, you don't have a gym, you don't have this, you don't have that. Because a huge part of the problem with men and their weakness too is their lack of ability to take responsibility for their actions. So if they take responsibility for their shitty physique and their poor health, that's also going to start a pattern that's going to carry over to the rest of their life of responsibility for other aspects of their life. And just like Coach Greg was talking about, you know, as men, we recognize a hierarchy every time we enter a room. We know what the order is, okay? But men are so weak that women don't even take them seriously. Like the way men are treated, you know, commonly in this society because of these weak men, I don't experience that ever. With all women, I'm treated with respect. And you know, a funny thing is, there was a woman I was seeing a couple weeks ago. Obviously, she turned out to be a fucking lunatic, as they all are. He explained that she would never talk back to me or treat me a particular way because she was afraid of me. And I'm not saying this, you know, in a way where she's afraid I'm going to hit her. It's just that physical dominance, that physical strength, which carried over into, you know, through that, I'm an emotionally and psychologically strong person. They wouldn't even try you. And if we get more men to be this way, because the responsibility of the man is to lead and not, you know, bend over backwards for everything women want, everything's going to fix itself. If men can just start step one, just take responsibility for their physical, you know, their physical appearance and their health, it's going to carry over. I'm going to make stronger men. So basically my goal, my mission was to break it down into as simple of an application as possible so men could get on this track.
Very cool, man. Very cool. Steve, let's get you in here, man. What'd you talk about to the men and to the fathers at 21?
Well, yeah, I first I do the fathers. What I talk to them about is, I mean, because there's this wave going on that, you know, marriage is just, I guess, this difficult thing. But, you know, when you're a man, nothing's difficult. And what I was trying to explain to the guys as far as marriage is that, you know, for me being married for 22 years with no arguments, no fights, any man can have that because I'm willing to say no. And the woman I'm with knows she has one foot out of the door. I mean, I'm willing to let her go for my happiness. It's not happily ever after. It's happily after me. You know what I mean? Because it's all about me and what I want. And I taught the guys to create that. You can't create that when you first meet the woman. You've got to create that from the comfort of your own home. You've got to create standards, laws, rules, codes, and principles. You got to create and know what meeting and dating is and have a standard for that. Have a standard for a relationship. Have a standard for what is living together. What is the standard for engagement? What is the standard for marriage? What is the standard for fatherhood? All this stuff has to be before you walk out that door because you set the expectations. And she has every right to fight it or say no, but you got every right to walk away. So what I was telling these guys is that, like some of the men here, I'm not here to blame women. I'm a man. I don't blame women.
Right.
For anything. I don't ever do that. But I take accountability. So I want what I was teaching the guys is create the standard first. And then when you find the woman, be the standard. So then when you're the standard, she's going to either follow or fight you. And if she's fighting you, she's gone. She'll get a write-up and a warning. But after that, you're gone because you're replaceable. You're not that special. Until I say you special. You don't have value until I say you have value. And at the end of the day, in that room, I was telling them, at the end of the day, she's going after your last name and your ring. So what is she bringing to your world outside of her ass and her titties? What is she doing for you outside of that? Because if she's not bringing anything to your world, then she's just as good as a booty call or my dog, give her some meat. Well, not that kind of meat, but that meat. Yeah, I mean, and let her go. So that was the patriarch thing I was talking about. Now, as far as the 21, I was getting really deeper because I was challenging the men this year. As I was saying, we're almost at the end of the year. And the sad thing is you're the same person you were December 31st at 11:59 and 50 seconds sitting around lying to yourself when that damn ball drops, saying that you're going to be better, or you're going to do better, or you're going to do this, and all you're doing is lying to yourself. So I talked about how a lot of guys are on a surface level when it comes to the game or manhood. You know, on the streets we call it game, but manhood. They're surface level because they're so busy trying to be a part of a collective and not trying to be single-minded. And I brought up a thing that Jill Scott said. You know, she just basically said, if you can tell me what to do, you can tell me what to do. But if you can't tell me what to do, you can't tell me what to do. And I was telling the guys out there that how can you tell a woman what to do when you can't even tell yourself what to do? When you have no values, no beliefs, no characters, no laws, no rules, no codes, no mission statement, no vision statement, no legacy statement on you and how you move as a man, then how are you going to direct and guide a woman? And that's some of the problems that these young men are having. They're caught up in this drug of word phrases that I talked about, how wrestlers in the 90s, like with The Rock, you know, Vince McMahon sold phrases, catchphrases to connect the crowd with the wrestler. And a lot of YouTubers are doing the same thing. They're connecting words that have no meaning in a man's life. They're just words and phrases where these young men live by these words, regurgitate these words, mimic these words, and that's not them. So I just try to tell them that whatever happens with a woman does not define you. Whatever a woman does to somebody else is none of your business. You shouldn't be worried about the next man because the next man is in you. The statistics out there are not you. You are not a statistic. You are a man. Everything you do is for you and nobody else. And the last thing I said was everything you do should be one thought of one letter, of one word, of one sentence, of one paragraph, of one chapter in the book of you. So when you start to see the game for what it is versus what you want it to be, you're going to grow. But you've got to have that powwow with yourself and understand at the end of the day that you got to build the collective in your mind. You got to build your scribe. They don't even know what their scribe is. You got to build your governing body. You got to build your film room in which you look over your day and see where things are going. But they're so busy looking outside of themselves and looking at what women are doing versus what they're doing is the problem. And until they stop doing that, they're never going to grow. So they'll be the same guy and they'll go over and over again. And at the end of the day, time is going to move. We're going to get older, but they're not going to evolve as men. So they need to wake up.
You know, Steve, that was awesome, man. That whole monologue. Back in the day in the old pickup, the old manosphere, the old pickup artist days, we call these guys dabblers because they would dabble with different schools of thought and pickup and different coaches they liked. But they're always just dabbling and never really changing or doing anything new or doing anything deep, like deep work that would actually change them over time. It sounds to me like the essence of both your talks actually too is boundaries. I mean, you have a lot of different names for it, standards and rules and these things. And these are different things, but it's like boundaries with women and boundaries with yourself. And it sounds like you did a really good job of building up both of those for the men there.
Thank you, brother.
So I'll catch the video soon.
That, you know, Steve is doing, he's challenging men, which is different from what a lot of people are doing. It seems like we're trying to challenging the thoughts and feminism and women, but he's challenging men. So what it's doing is, you know, you talked about Socrates, architect. You talk about Jay and being a builder of his body. Steve's talking about building the man and the chapters and you having a philosophy. Well, men are doing it ass backwards. They have nothing and they want the woman. We're expecting, because it's so easy to see the women and get them sometimes, we're expecting them to like us for us, and then we'll build together and build around and power couple and all of these things. And we're finding out that it's not working for everyone. And we get frustrated with this. So you're like, dang, this is not working. Or she took what we had and we created this together and she took it. Well, the point is that you guys are saying, Jay saying, build your body up and you'll command a great respect. You're saying,
if you're a creator, then they'll recognize it.
They're gonna recognize it. It actually works in your favor, but it takes a lot of work, doesn't it, Arthur? It takes a lot of work to
100%.
do that.
But you have to do it for yourself.
Avoid that work. Go ahead, guy.
Yeah, we can move on to Arthur. Actually, this is a good segue. But yeah, we're all builders, I think, is what Coach is saying. We build buildings, or we build our bodies, or we build boundaries, we build relationships. That's what men do, and it's a very masculine thing to build. I think Jack Donovan's probably spoken about that several thousand times, with good reason. But Arthur, you're a builder. You're a builder of art. You're a builder of vision through painting. You're a fine artist. So talk to me about your experience again at 21, and particularly what you talked about to the men in your speech. I heard a lot of good things about it. In fact, I heard you and Jeff Younger were kind of the dark horses that surprised everybody as some of the best speeches, particularly for new speakers.
Right on. Well, I mean, yeah, Jeff Younger I think he's super underrated. You know, if it wasn't for what he was dealing with at a personal level and viral level, like that guy is an encyclopedic knowledge of philosophy and religion. But with that said, yeah, I titled my presentation as The Social Landscape to avoid being obliquely political. But, you know, we all know the sentiment that politics is downstream from culture. We've heard that repeated. And my, I guess, war cry was that we have to become active participants on the matter. Because what we're all talking about here is masculinity, right? But what is masculinity? It is the conscientiousness to recognize and create objective standards and boundaries. And men are the only ones that can do so. So I was just trying to show you guys visually that this also applies in the arts and entertainment, where the engine of radical leftism is fueled by feminism and the misandric, self-hating men that's associated with them. So that ideology also ventriculated into the arts. And when masculinity is absent in the arts, all the objectivity goes down the hill. And I showed that in my presentation. And, you know, I really wanted to make it clear that kind of like, you know, Steve was saying, this isn't like a attack on a woman per se, right? It's really more that men need to step up and participate more vocally and not be invisible, as Tanner says, right? So that's sort of the vantage point I was coming from in regards to recognizing the left for what they are and understanding that they're really fueled by the feminine spirit, and we need to bring back objectivity through masculinity.
Arthur, would you say that feminism has had a directly and significantly negative impact on the world of art in America and in Western culture? Is that an essence?
100%. So in the Genesis Council, we have all different types of artists, right? Okay. Filmmakers, actors, writers. And I vet every single member, and they all tell me the same thing. You know, I had a filmmaker, he says, I'm trying to make this heroic film, and I want to cast some actors, so I have to go through this guild. And they all say, well, what if you depicted more, you know, non-cis heteronormative, like it's all this Klingon language that he has to go through, and it's crazy. It's crazy. So it doesn't matter about the medium. It's not medium specificity, right? Every single artist is telling me the same thing, because we have all different types. You know, iron sharpens iron, right? Martial arts, where we're training, whatever it is. This is the artistic, the aesthetic form of that. We're all here testing each other and being accountable and critiquing each other, but you know, we're all coming. This collective is born out of the fact that we live in this world that the most hated thing today seems to be masculinity.
Yeah.
And there's no place for it in the arts because the left has absolute ownership of those big five.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think when we say femininity, it's like either we're talking, I think, about a dark feminine, like a very negative femininity. You know, with these different examples we've had, you know, women who are, you know, masculinized, so their nature is out of place. They can also be over mothering, right? Like a helicopter parent, and then they have like a mama's boy son, which is just an unhealthy, you know, dynamic for a child. But yeah, it's like I think with art, femininity is way out of place, and like you're saying, it's destroyed standards because they don't like recognize the boundaries that are needed to create great art. Sean Smith is talking about your speech. Actually, I saw his 21 report. We're going to publish it probably tomorrow. We just published Coach Greg's actually last night. But he's talking about in your speech, you contrasted like these old classical paintings and buildings that were very rigid, right? They had a lot of structure to it and boundaries. And then you showed now art can be considered a banana duct taped to a wall. You know, like that. Yeah, I think you actually showed that in your speech. And this is the epitome of like no boundaries and no standards and no rules. It's just whatever. And that's garbage. Ayn Rand, actually, my favorite philosopher, she loved the kind of art you make, and she hated this neoliberal, this woke garbage, even in her day back in the 60s and 70s, compared, never mind now. But she actually had a book called The Return of the Primitive. Someone had another book, similar of name. I wonder if it's inspired by that.
Maybe.
But yeah, it's, you know, she saw the lack of boundaries. She attacked it philosophically more so rather than from like a feminism perspective. But that was in her day too. This is like 40 years ago at this point. But yeah, I love seeing
it's yin and yang. You know, the feminine is aesthetic relativity and the masculine is hierarchy. And we recognize that. You know, we talked a little about you know, from different vantage points here today. But I'll tell you, if you looked at who the gatekeepers were before postmodern art came into the picture, they were all men. They're all wealthy patriarchs, you know, men in positions of power who wanted to put symbolic art up onto their walls. I can tell you as a person, you know, I have my whole roster of collectors. Anytime a woman wants art, it's decorative. It's vague. It can be anything of that sort. Whenever men want art, they want something iconic or symbolic. Like that's not a coincidence. And I think it's because, you know, we're the ones who we understand that we want to placate something of meaning and permeate that and uphold that standard. Women just want something in the background to make them feel like, you know, whatever the chaotic, you know, reflection is at that time.
Live, laugh, love.
Yeah, I don't, you know, something.
Yeah, it's like you know, I was talking about Jordan Peterson a bit last night. I think people got a little butthurt about it. He talks a lot about order and chaos, and as I think we all can probably agree, like men bring order, women bring chaos, and that's not entirely. It's just kind of the way things are. Like I'm not saying that in some accusatory tone. Obviously, it's just the way things are, and there's sort of a beauty to that, like this chaos that the feminine brings. It's interesting. It's exciting. It's fun. This is the hot crazy matrix, right? That's chaos, right? A girl is hot and crazy, and she's fun to fuck. I mean, this is like this ain't rocket science. Yeah,
but it's controlled chaos. I mean, but what we have is out of control chaos.
Yeah,
Goes, you know, they get to say what they want to say, and then when we say it, we're censored and demonetized and deplatformed, and you're going, wait a minute, whoa. You're like,
coach, it's like fire. Fire can cook your food, right? It's chaos but controlled, or it can burn your house down and kill you.
That's
you know,
true.
ruin your life. I mean, it's like that. It's like government.
Yeah. I don't want to blame the feminine again. Like, there's so many artists who are female that are like they're making stellar art, but again, overall, the numbers speak for itself that the absence of masculinity is a problem. It's not femininity per se, because there's so many artists who are able to produce amazing works of art just by exercising that romanticism selectively. So there's still a source there. But my point is that, like, masculinity is so important for. I said in my speech, my central claim will be that masterpieces are produced by masculinity, and you look at any great work of art, and you'll see that theme. And I think we have to recognize that pattern, because our brains also have that pattern recognition. So we have to be able to also articulate that.
I say a lot about America. Like, America was, like I said in my speech this year, it was the collision of masculinity and good philosophy, of good ideas about freedom. And we don't revere the founding mothers, we revere the founding fathers. It doesn't mean that women didn't have a role back then. I mean, they raised the founding fathers were little boys once. They had mothers who loved them and took care of them. They played an important role in different ways too, beyond that. But it's the founding fathers we revere and that we respect and admire, and we should.
I want to talk about this idea of women being property, because I've given some thought to that. And I found myself wondering, you know, so if you can say women didn't have the right to vote, women were considered property. And so I thought about women not having the right to vote during the early days of the Republic. And it kind of actually made sense to me, because we're all used to living in cities now. We have always on media. We can, you know, read an infinity of newspapers, you know, and get the information that we need to make informed decisions, say politically. But if you turn back the clock, say 250 years ago, that wasn't the case. You didn't have as large cities as we have now. You had people in isolated rural populations, you know, homesteads, farmsteads, etc., not clustered, and essentially no newspapers like we even have them today. Everything travels by word of mouth. Where does everything travel through word of mouth? It travels through the marketplace. Who's in the marketplace? Men are in the marketplace while women are caring for the home and raising the children. So who are the people that were actually literally physically empowered to make informed political decisions? That was the men. It wasn't that women were intentionally excluded in some sense to create patriarchy. It's that women literally did not have access to informational networks to make informed political decisions. Like, it wasn't structured that way intentionally to exclude women. It was who are the people that are able to make informed political decisions? Men were. And how are women able to make informed political decisions? By the men telling them. So why give the women the right to vote? Because they didn't have access to the information that they just get from their husband. It was sort of more like a household kind of thing. So I even, in the notion of women being property, like, you can look at that through the lens of women had to be considered property, so that if another man harms your wife, you can take legal action, say. So it's not necessarily, like, a lot of these things are framed, and I'm
back
not
then you'd probably just shoot him back then, but
right. But I mean, you can take things further in a legal sense if you consider women property. It's not that they created these structures to treat women as objects, right? Like, look, I'm not a historian, but I'm just trying to see, like, what are the good reasons that you could think about that something like this would be done, instead of saying, because the whole notion of patriarchy is that men naturally, since the beginning of time, have objectified women and treated them as less than human, second-class citizens, right? But at the same time, these are the human beings, meaning women, that were entrusted with the most precious duty that you can give to a human, which is to raise the next generation of kids. If a man cares about his legacy, he's, if he's smart, he's not going to objectify his women and treat her like a second-class citizen. He's going to love her. He's going to treasure her. He's going to protect her, so that they can raise, good children, both sons and daughters. And so I try to unplug a lot of these ideas, that are just kind of propagating, and say, well, what if there was actually a good reason societally to be doing these things, on men's behalf, that was actually served a protective function of women rather than an exploitative function. And so I just tried taking these ideas apart on my own, because I think the ideas of feminism and how men have treated women through history, in this negative sense, are so widespread that they're almost unchallengeable. So I've just sort of taken this position that I challenge them now. Women were property, and that's bad. Well, what if there was a good reason for that? Is sort of the question that I take with things.
Yeah, there's more nuance to it. Before I forget, let's get Socrates to talk about his speeches.
Interesting enough, I kind of talked kind of off brand, really. It was a speech in 3 parts, to 3 different audiences.
You spoke at all the events.
Yeah, all 3 events, essentially the same speech, but targeted specifically to each audience, where at its core. And the centerpiece of it was both a identification of a warning, because I think right now we are running headlong into an environment, and culturally, where our civil liberties and rights are being stripped from us and being taken away wholesale, and that there's the rush to moral threshold of violence is being thrust upon us. It's also a very stark warning that, hey, violence in response may not be the most appropriate thing to do, because it may not be effective. It also has massive consequences. And so that's where the civil resistance concept comes in, and I kind of go into that. But then the last component to that speech was also the fact that the regimes pushing this typically are very fragile. And I wanted to showcase the fragility of the current regime right now. But specifically to talk about, in the 22, when I was talking to women, civil resistance, women get that for a whole host of sexual.
To be clear, too, the women got pretty triggered with your speech, much more so than the men.
Yeah, interestingly enough, they did, which was kind of surprising, because if you talk about what demographic gets civil resistance better, more than men or women, it is going to be women. Because of their nature, their social networks, their empathy degrees, their ability to develop relationships and supporters and collectively. That's what women are great at, below the threshold of violence, And so, in many ways, I also wanted to show
they've been super effective with feminism. Obviously,
that's one, but not even looking at particular roles, but when we look at the threshold for success, like, so for example, no movement has been unsuccessful when they've been able to mobilize 10% of the population. 10%. Yeah. Most are successful at 3.5, and that's overturning governments that are repressive and using violence. So if we're looking at just changing the bulwark of culture, the threshold is going to be much lower, much lower. And so the reality is we need them not only to be successful, within nonviolent campaigns, but also to get that groundswell to enable their traits and their compatibles and complementary nature with men's. And this is one of the stellar points where they're not only equal with men, they're essential for that tasking. Because most women are not suited for combat roles. I know there's a whole host of reasons why. And so, not only that, when you go to conflict like that, the ramifications are typically negative. And one of the sets I brought up was the fact that you'll end up seeing that language repeated in the future. Not only is it more violent, the collateral damage tends to be extremely high. We can sit down and point at our own history that, yes, there was a 16 to 15 year period of time before the revolution took place that was violent, that was active civil resistance. We did have a violent conflict. But then you sit down and say that historical nature of violence and rebellion would show itself, and those seeds would germinate into the Civil War, the American Civil War, in which we've lost 1.5 million American lives because of that rebellious nature and that hallmark of historical reliance on violence. Now we can sit down and say, since then we've learned a tremendous amount. We've had Martin Luther King within our own history to showcase what the movement of a nonviolent campaign can really change society for the better without using violence. So, I showcase civil resistance as being the active confrontational manner in which people can exert personal power outside of a system. It is also the antidote from impotency, the ability or a concept that you can't make change as an individual, all the way up to the threshold of violence to soothe the frustrations, the angers of missteps and overreach for governments and the missteps of culture. And so I utilize that and showcase that, and to really press upon each group. So the women, how they're compatible and complementary to men, how we need them. To 21 Convention, quite honestly, you're talking about military-aged males, and that they are one bad decision away from not only jail time, but also losing their lives, and that's a waste. And I'm not saying that at a certain point that there isn't moral righteousness to taking up violence and duty, but there's a huge swath of morality between here and there that we need to cover and make sure we emphasize. And then, quite honestly, with fathers, we talk about 15 days to flatten the curve to 3 jabs to keep your job. It's really not about the job, is it? It's about your livelihood, your personal identity, the fact that men are divorced because of losing a job. And it's not just that you're going to lose a job. You're going to turn your wives into single mothers. Okay. And all the ramifications to that, the detriment to children, your children, how, if you want to protect your family, how do you do this? And not getting that jab is a very, very direct threat against you, your family, and your children. And quite literally, Steve talks about it, very eloquently, your legacy. And they are coming very directly for that.
Yep. Well put, man. Yeah, I heard a lot about your speeches throughout the event. You did a workshop too, which is pretty cool.
Yes, I did.
Yeah, but the women in particular, because you're usually like a smooth operator, and I didn't know what you were gonna do. So when I heard the women get all ruffled, their panties got ruffled by Socrates, that was surprising. That's not normal. But it's not. You've done that once before.
Yep.
Like in 2019 in Poland, you caught me by surprise. You went out swinging hard. I was like, oh shit! Because people think I know this in advance, and I don't know this. And I'm like, I know a little bit. I said PowerPoint maybe or something with him, but I'm not I'm not having like a 2-hour conversation about his upcoming presentation. I got a million other things to do, right? So it hits me with the attendees. I'm like, oh shit, look at that. Yeah, it's fun. I like being surprised sometimes. Like that. It's cool. Before we wrap up, we've been going for over an hour and a half. I do want to kind of open the panel. Do you guys have any wish list items for next year's 21 Summit? For example, I've been contemplating reviving the under 21 convention for young men, ages 18 to maybe like 23, 18 to 23 like that, and doing 4 events at the same time, which is pretty daunting, but I think it's possible. And it might be worthwhile to bring that back for young men. A cheap ticket, a short event, a Saturday, Sunday kind of thing, where we can get young guys out to meet the other older men, to meet, the fathers, to meet the speakers. And I think that'd be kind of cool. And I think Zoomers need it, like Coach Greg was talking about. They don't know anything about being masculine. They've been raised in a world even worse than what I grew up with multiple layers of feminism. They have like a triple burger feminism. Instead of a nothing burger, it's like a triple burger. I grew up with like a double cheeseburger feminism. So if you guys have any thoughts for next year's or suggestions for what you'd like at the event, I'm open. Tony in particular has a lot of access behind the scenes too. Might be some ideas.
Well, I think this event really ran super well. Probably the best event that I've been a part of, without a doubt. And I think it's the repeating volunteers and staff that create that congruency in the whole event. I know a lot of people don't see what I'm doing behind the scenes, but I'm doing a lot more than people think. So,
Yeah.
But as far as changes, I think always introducing new speakers and real polarizing speakers is a great way to just add curiosity. And I think every new speaker brings a new crowd. So, and in new crowd are people that are truly waking up to what we're talking about. So,
Well put.
Anthony, you and I talked about this a little bit, but bring in the culture, man. Make this enlightenment full throttle. You know, we're going to bring in some. We'll talk about it more. Arts Expo, we'll see. You know, bring in that aesthetic dimension, and that'll make people. You know, because we're all fighting, right? We're on the front line fighting, but if we have the culture in the back and the beauty there, we don't even need to talk to the left. They just will see that and go, "That's why they fight."
Yep.
Right. That's how you win.
Yeah, so to be clear, two things I want to mention. Tony is responsible for basically corralling the speakers, wrangling them, and you know, setting them up for the interviews and kind of speeches and stuff too. He's integral to what we do. And what Arthur's talking about, he suggested to me doing an art expo for masculine art at the event, you know, like a separate room maybe with lights and all kinds of cool shit. He kind of did this year on his own. He had his painting. It's still in my house. I got to get it back to him. Thanks for the free painting.
Really?
Man. Yeah.
I don't know that.
But I never thought. I would have never thought of that on my own. Like I've had a respect for art philosophically for a long time, but to actually set up a whole room where we got half a dozen really cool paintings or sculptures and things like that, I'm 100% down with that. Yeah.
Crazy. Yeah.
And your whole Genesis Council, I think.
We have everything you need already. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know nothing about easels and all that. I had to buy easel for his painting. I didn't know what the hell that was barely. I was like, where did I buy one?
We'll talk about that, my good man.
Yeah. But that's a really good idea. And I would have never thought. Yeah, I told Arthur, I was like, yo, man, I go fishing. I don't know what the fuck that is. Like,
easel.
Yeah.
Can I make a suggestion to go along with the under 21 convention? Which I think would be great to do. I do think young men need this, and they need exposure to the many different speakers and ideas, because where else are they going to find it? How are they going to get to interact with men of the caliber that speak at 21 and the attendees as well? Where are they going to get that influence in their everyday lives? Because in some ways, you know, they're even more feminized than any previous generation. You know, but they see the failure of the ideology as well, and are starting to wake up and deprogram themselves, and are still very isolated in their communities of other men who don't share their ideas at their age. I might also suggest a panel, like a council of elders, because if we're going back to under 21, you know, that stage of a man's life cycle, 18 to 21 years old, like maybe there's room to have, you know, grandfathers, you know, 60 plus talking about that stage of a man's life cycle, because, you know, there's real wisdom and there's real gravity in that. And I think bringing those two halves of men's lives together, you know, the grandfather used to raise up the youth and teach them the right way to be. And if we can tie those threads together, you know, because we've already brought religion, which has sort of an elder component to it, but actual like men with life experience talking almost directly, or to the men in general, but talking to the young men, that could be hugely powerful to close that loop.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'd like to add too is like I would like to see not only a convention where people are speaking, like just like what we're talking about with under 21, but to sit down and say, okay, for the next 12 months, this council of elders are the guys that have spoken. We're going to kind of recur every quarter or some segment where we get those guys back together online to pursue what their objectives are doing. So you're literally mentoring these guys, not only at a one-time event, but you know, throughout the rest of the year, to really help springboard them forward and develop that personal connection, rapport. I think would be incredibly important.
Yeah, Coach Greg, do you want to hop in?
The event has evolved like crazy, even just over the last 2 years. We got a lot of philosophies. You have now the artistic component coming in, which I caught because I spoke after Arthur, so I was able to catch that, and it was an eye-opening speech. And I was like, I never considered any of this stuff, so this is great that it's coming into that. And young men, you have to understand about this generation. 90, when they get to elementary school, 95% of the people that they interact with are women. Teachers are women. Then when they go to high school, it's something like 73, and then when they go to college, it's something like 55 to 60% of the instructors are female. So they're getting one-sided perspective for their whole childhood entering into adulthood. And so what we would give them, And of course, you also include the fatherless homes and the single mother. Most young boys don't see a man for quite a long time. So it would definitely be a wake up call to see that for those guys. But yeah, man, I would just want to say before I came to the first 21, what the idea of the 21 convention was then for what I thought it was to what it has evolved to now is incredible to see. So I commend Anthony on that to keep putting this together. As he ages, he matures, and the event matures along with it. And he has patriarchs around him to help him out and help grow this event. So I think going on to the future is going to evolve a little bit more. So keep evolving. I appreciate the evolution. But when I first heard of 21, I thought it was just the PUAs. You know what I mean? That's all I thought till I showed up, and it was a lot more detailed and philosophical than it was presented to me in the past, or what people thought it was me. And so I'm glad I'm seeing this evolution, and I'm glad I'm a part of it. So thank you for having me on.
Hell yeah. Thanks, Coach. I appreciate the compliment and the recommendations, man. Or the feature, man. Fuck yeah. Man, whose audio is going with that in the background? I hear somebody breathing, man. What the hell is that?
Somebody breathing heavy.
Yeah, I don't know what the hell is going on.
Tony got a girl in the back on the side. He can't see. He can't see.
Yeah, that's all right. But no, Coach, that's from the heart, man. I appreciate that big time. And it has changed a lot since you started speaking last year. Yeah. And I'm gonna keep it going, man. I really think the under 21 might be a really good addition. And I'm also thinking about next year changing the schedule around significantly. Nothing crazy, but it'll be a significant change in how the event operates. I'm not really ready to reveal the details on that just yet, but I have an idea that I think will make it actually run quite a bit better.
Yeah. You know what? I just want to say something real quick. I love the fact that Arthur is part of all this, because I push to these men right now to take them damn posters down and start bringing art into their homes, so they can describe and define. This is, when a woman comes in your home, she's going to look and define you by how you're living. And a lot of young men don't even know that. And the artwork that Arthur has, I mean, you want her to walk into not just a masculine man, but a masculine kingdom where you can walk her over and describe and talk about the strokes of the paint, the artist that painted it, why you want. See, it's things like that I always say you always want to either elevate or educate a woman. That's the key to all this. And I think what Arthur is bringing to the 21 is also showing men another side. It's not, I mean, everybody's getting great content, but once the lights go out and you go home, you're going home to a home that has empty walls or like fucking pornographic posters. Now, nudity can be art. I mean, I always talk about nude art. It's beauty in art, but we got to get these young men to see as men see versus as kids see.
Yeah.
Thank you, guys. I'm honored to be here with you all. Thank you, Steve.
Yeah.
It's great to have you.
It's been a really good time, really good event, really good show today, guys. I appreciate everybody's input, man. I think we're going to wrap up. So for you guys tuning in today live, I appreciate it. Live on the show. Check the description. There's going to be a link to everybody's social media where you can follow them and stuff like that. After the show, I got an update on the channels and stuff, the descriptions. But this has been Anthony Johnson with the Redman Group, Socrates, Ken Curry, Will Spencer, Coach Greg Adams, Jay Vincent, Steve the Dean Williams from the Man Mindset, Arthur Kwan Lee from Genesis Council, Tony Bruno, and we got the Dragon apparently as well. So we got Game of Thrones up in this motherfucker. And Michael Foster was on earlier too. I appreciate his time today. So that's it for today's show, episode 151. Thank you all for joining me on today's show as well as at the event. It's my life's work, man. It's my dream come true every year. And you guys make that happen in a big, big way, along with the attendees and the staff and the volunteers. So big thanks.
Yeah.
And we appreciate you doing it, Anthony. Absolutely.
Yeah. Man, the number of men that you've created a platform for, the number of men that you've created whole careers for or enabled them to establish their careers is probably uncountable. So thank you for that, because some of those men have gone on to change my life. So thank you for that.
Thanks, Will. You're welcome, man. For all you guys do. I love doing the work. I'm gonna keep doing it another 15 years, man. I'll see you guys at the 30-year anniversary. Like 15 years. We'll all be old men. I'll be joining you guys at the graves, man.
Oh man.
All right, God bless you guys.
All right.